talking about negative thinking, and we're going to be talking about negative thinking. And my name's Emily Archer, and I've been a wellbeing coach for about a year now, nearly a year. And I have done quite a few of these lives before, and my journey with Isopia started when I was, a year ago, and since then my mental health just has improved, even just working here. So that's something that we all say at Isopia, is that we're constantly practicing almost what we preach. We're saying, okay, this is what we're going to ask our members to do, so we're going to do it as well. And this is Kay.
Hi.
And we are at Isopia, a organisation that looks for ways that we can cope better, and ways that we can look for those little moments where we can be more self-aware, and we can look at how we can change that thought process. And today we'll be talking about negative thinking, because negative thinking has such a massive overlap on all of our well-being. We can kind of get ourselves into really low moods because of the way that we think. So we're going to be discussing a little bit about how negative thinking affects us, what it is, and how we can move forward and how we can reframe that. So what we're going to do today is we're going to have a chat about that, and then if I could ask you all to be careful about what you are saying on the live, because it is a public platform that's open to everyone. So we will be having a look at your messages, but just be mindful that lots of people will be able to see them. But if you do need some support, then please give us a call. There's the number on the bottom, scrolling along, so we can give you some support then. But we'll go on to what is negative thinking. So a negative thought is predominantly a fear or apprehension based. So you're looking at what could go wrong. You're looking at maybe a past experience where something has gone wrong, and you're saying this is exactly what's going to happen, but it's not necessarily happened yet, and you're putting yourself into that situation when it hasn't happened already. And
the fear of the unknown.
Yeah, definitely. Wow. Based around the fear of the unknown, we can kind of make our realities through our thoughts, and our thoughts are so powerful. I think we have like 170,000 thoughts a day, and if you're honest with yourself, how many of those thoughts do you reckon are negative? Probably quite a lot. And I think it's so easy to get into that thought pattern and then spiral, and then you think of more negative thoughts, and you think of more ways that you can bully yourself. And we've got a really good workshop called The Inner Critic, which looks at negative thinking and that voice inside your head saying things like you're not good enough, or you're not, you don't deserve this, and all of those things. But the way that you can challenge that is by reframing it, and this is really difficult. And we were talking about this and how difficult it is, because you have so many thoughts a day, and because they're so automatic. We're so used to just thoughts popping into our brain and then coming out again. It's so difficult to catch them all. So it's more about being self-aware, isn't it? About catching the ones that you are able to catch, and not being afraid to say, I'm struggling with negative thinking, and I'm struggling with being nasty to myself today, and talking about it with someone. Because I think the amount of times that we can kind of get stuck in a spiral of just bullying ourselves.
Yeah, and then one negative thought leads to another negative thought, and it just carries on in that spiral.
Definitely. So ways that it can affect our well-being is through negative power, and really make you scared of things. You yourself so many fears because of that voice, because of that negative thinking because, oh, what if this happens, or what if this person doesn't like me, or what if this goes wrong, or that happens. And I think that can be really draining and that can be really exhausting. If you guys want, then we will, if you put them in the chat, we will have a chat about how we can reframe that negative thought for you. But constantly believing the negative thoughts can make us think that they're true. So if you're constantly just attaching all of your reality onto those thoughts, that's what makes it happen. And you can say, people say, oh, you're thinking it into reality, and you're thinking it so hard that it becomes true, and that is a thing. I think that does happen. And when we think about the positives, we almost don't really identify with them. I think because of our low self-esteem that negative thinking causes, we almost think that they're more true than if someone said something positive. Like, say Kay said something positive to me, I'd probably 2 years ago wash straight over my head and I'd never remember if she'd even said it. If she said something negative about me, I'd take that to my grave. I would remember that forever. And I think that shows a lot about our well-being in itself, because we always think about what we feel. We're searching for validation for how we already feel.
Yeah, and we are, I think as humans, we do tend to try and focus on the negatives more, and it's just about how we can turn that round to try and remember those positives.
Definitely.
And there's a lot more of those than we realise.
Definitely. I think even just in the office, sometimes we find that we can focus on the bad things that are happening and the stressful things that are happening, but actually we've all had a really fun day. We've had laughs, we've had some really weird chats, but we go home thinking about how stressful it was instead of how lovely it was. And it's about reframing that. And I think in my experience, when I go through a phase of being really negative and being surrounded by negative people, I become lower in my mood, I become more anxious, I become almost more paranoid, because I'm assuming that people are thinking the exact same thing as I am. And that's not always the case. And I think with negative thinking, it really is about, and someone said to me once, and I'll probably carry this with me forever, but your vibe is your tribe. So if you're surrounding yourself with people who are also thinking negatively, they're going to have that impact on your mind too, and you're going to start thinking positively. So it's really important to be cautious about who you've got surrounding you, and just be mindful of that. So it can also, I think, if we feel negative all the time, we're thinking negatively, we're constantly going through life thinking what could happen next, what disaster is going to happen next. Makes us feel really hopeless, makes us feel like this is never going to get better, especially during that healing process and that recovery process. If we're constantly thinking to ourselves, this is never going to get better, I'm never going to recover, I'm never going to feel better, then we won't. And
it's quite natural as well, going through that sort of process, that sometimes we might go a couple of steps forward and go one back, but that's okay as well. Because that is all part of our learning of how we can reframe them.
100%. And I think when you are going through a transition, and when you do have that fear of the unknown and that change, it can be really scary. And then your automatic thoughts that you've always had, that all of us as human beings that have carried us through to survival, has had, what if it doesn't work? What if I fail? That's the part of our survival, but it's when it goes too far and it impacts our lives and it stops us from doing the things that we want to do, is where we need to try and pick that moment and say, I'm going to try and reframe these thoughts, even just one at a time. Even if it was, I don't know, what would you say, Kay? Maybe like if you're getting a job interview and you're like, I'm not going to get this job, you probably won't.
because you're going into it already thinking that you haven't got it, and then that can then stop you kind of showing them who you really are, and what you have got to give to something.
Yeah, definitely. And it's difficult to, because when we already have anxiety, low confidence, low self-esteem, low mood, it's really easy to go that way. But you'd come across as maybe not so enthusiastic, maybe a little bit quiet, a little bit shy, not very confident, which would then act against you. And that's the thing, that's the power of our thoughts. Our thoughts get transformed into our actions. So what we really want to do is cut it at its source, so cut it at the thought, cut it where it starts, and then the behavior won't come out. But there are ways to which you can reframe your thoughts. So there's things like positive self-talk. When I was on my healing journey, I was like, I'm not gonna.
This is the tricky one, isn't it?
Yeah, I was like, there's no way I could sit in front of a mirror and say positive things, until I tried it, and I had a really closed mind to it. And then one day I just was like, I'm just gonna give it a go. I'm just gonna write some nice quotes about myself, like I am enough, or I am strong, or these things, and put them around my room. And the more I read them, the easier it became to tell myself that. And now if I go into a stressful situation, I'm able to literally just kind of like drip feed those positive thoughts, saying I can do this, I can do this, I can do this, I can do this, and then it becomes okay. But this is a really difficult thing, especially if you have got such a negative relationship with yourself. It can be really difficult to pick out those self-talk, that positive self-talk. But I think it's one of those things that's like fake it till you make it. And just like what I said earlier, just looking at writing nice quotes, or just writing I statements like I am brave or I am strong, and just reading them again and again, because our brain will start to process them as well as the negatives. There's also a lot of black and white thinking that we can achieve through negative thinking. It's either this is going to happen or this is going to happen. There's no in between. And being able to catch yourself in that black and white thinking and saying, I'm black and white thinking right now, is really, really beneficial, because you're not. So in the emotional regulation workshop, we have a tool called the stop tool. And this is designed to look at how we go from the trigger to the emotional response. And in the middle, we stop and we evaluate. So this tool is really good for negative thinking, because if you stop and you think, right, I'm negative thinking right now, this is black and white thinking, I need to reframe this, and I need to think of a solution, or write it down and think, is this true? What evidence do I have? It can really benefit you.
Yeah, that's something that really helped me, was looking at the evidence that I had to support the thoughts. And sometimes even now I have to write it down.
Definitely.
Because you kind of want to convince yourself that there is a fact to support it. But a lot of the time there isn't. It's just what we're thinking.
And sometimes I found, I don't know about you, but sometimes I found I'm like, yeah, there's definitely evidence for this thought. And I write it and I'm like, that's not actually evidence.
It's not.
That's actually just me manipulating what happened into what I want it to mean. So yeah, it's a really beneficial tool to write things down, do thought diaries, because you'd be surprised when you do a thought diary at how many negative thoughts you actually have that you don't need to think, and how many negative thoughts are either not your worry, they're not your monkey, they're not something that you need to be concerned about, and you can let that one go and give yourself more resources and more energy to focus on the ones that you do need to worry about, or you feel you need to worry about. And also with the like stop tool and the black and white thinking, I think it's really good to say, would I tell my friend this? Or what would I tell my friend? So for example, what would I tell Kay if she'd come to me with the exact same thought that I'm having right now? Would I be like, yep, you're absolutely right, you're rubbish? Probably not. Well, definitely not. But I think we're really judgmental of ourselves, and we can be really harsh on ourselves, and we would never treat anybody else like that. So I think it's really important to kind of almost treat yourself how you would like to be treated, because such a massive source of things like low mood, anxiety, low confidence, low self-esteem, even not having very effective communication, all comes from negative thinking. If you think that something's going to go wrong, you're not going to communicate effectively, you're not going to be able to be assertive, you're not going to be able to get your needs met, which then has a massive cascading effect on the rest of your well-being. So definitely looking at talking to people, being assertive with yourself, challenging yourself is really important. And Kay was saying to me earlier that someone had said to her yesterday that they'd underestimated the
power of talking.
Yeah. And I think that is just it, because sometimes we say things out loud and we're like, no, don't actually believe that, because in our mind we're so set, and we're so automatic, and we're so judgmental. We think we believe it, but as soon as we say it out loud, we can let it go. So talking is massively beneficial, as well as just having that reassurance from other people that no one thinks that. That's just in your head. But there are some other solutions, and one of them is asking yourself if these are useful. So, can what you are thinking about be used to benefit you, or are the thoughts detrimental? So, can you switch this thought around and use it as a motivating factor? Can you kind of use it to prove yourself wrong? And also, are these thoughts, do I need to be worrying about these thoughts right now? Do I need to be worrying about this situation right now, or can it wait? And asking how these thoughts behave and where they will lead you. Will these thoughts lead to rumination and then eventually exhaustion? So in one of the food freedom workshops, we look at worry trees, and we look at the way that, I know certainly for me, when I start to be negative thinking, they normally start with what if, or something like what will happen.
Things like that you think,
like I presume, or I'm like asking myself questions that I don't have the answer to because they haven't happened yet, and that leads me down that spiral. So looking at reframing and using different language, so telling yourself, I feel this way about this situation, and if I continue down this road, I'm going to start ruminating, and I'm going to ask myself more what if questions, and I'm going to give myself more questions that don't have any answers. And there's a solution focused thinking tree. So it's about, okay, are these thoughts helpful? If they are, then what am I going to do to be productive and proactive about this thought? And if they're not, how am I going to let it go? So you're constantly going down this tree, and you're challenging yourself. And giving yourself questions that you know you can figure out the answer to, which then when you get to the end result, sometimes you're less likely to go over it again. And if you do go over it again, you've still got that structure, so your thoughts aren't running away with themselves. Recognizing thought distortions. So are you filter thinking, catastrophizing, personalizing, or black and white thinking? Being really self-aware is important with negative thinking, because like we said earlier, you can just not even notice that you're being negative until it's too late. So
then about asking yourself how to work through the thoughts, so like deconstructing them, so kind of looking at, are they accurate, but also looking for the positive that might be in there as well, and are they realistic?
Definitely. And giving yourself realistic alternatives. So I think that's really important, because when we are catastrophizing, they're not realistic, or they may feel really realistic to you at the time. And asking yourself, am I actually going to be worried about this in 5 years' time? And if you're not, then you're probably catastrophizing. And you're even if, am I going to be worried about this tomorrow?
Yeah.
And if you are going to be worried about it tomorrow, then maybe it's something that we can work on. If you're not going to be worried about it tomorrow, you need to let it go. And it is difficult to let those thoughts go, especially when they keep popping back in and they don't leave you alone. And it does take a lot of effort, and it does take a lot of energy, but you can do it, definitely.
Yeah, and it's about sort of understanding that it is a thought and that you don't have to act on them.
Yeah.
It's something that I find really useful to remember.
Yeah, definitely. I don't know who told me, one of the wellbeing coaches was like, you're in control of your thoughts and your actions, but you're not in control of other people's thoughts and actions. And that's really important, I think, because you can control to a certain extent what you think, or you can manage what you think, but you can't manage somebody else's opinion, and it wouldn't be right to do so because that's theirs. But you can manage how you perceive that and how you interpret it. And ask yourself, what is the cost of staying in this mindset? So I think all of us here know the cost of staying in this mindset, not going out,
low self-esteem,
low mood, anxiety, paranoia, so many detrimental things to our well-being. And it's like what we always say here, it's a comfort zone, but it's not comfortable, it's miserable. As humans, we don't want to walk through life being negative. We want to be able to have a positive outlook on life, but it's difficult. And it's difficult to say what you actually mean when you are negative and when you aren't looking at the positives. I don't think paranoia is totally unfounded all the time. Definitely not.
No.
Louis Scott, definitely not. I think that there is definitely something there. There's a seed that's been planted. There's something that has sparked off that thought. And I think the thing that we're trying to say is that sometimes we get consumed by that paranoia and we let that paranoia control us.
Yeah.
And that's what we mean by that comfort zone. It's easier for that paranoia to take the driving seat than it is for us to say, right, I'm going to rationalize this, I'm going to think about it, I'm going to analyze it, and if it's not true, I'm going to move on. And that's the thing with negative thinking. They are so powerful, and they have the power that we give them almost, which I don't want that to sound like it's put down or like limiting the impact that has on us. But I think in my experience anyway, I let my negative thinking rule my life, and I nearly lost my whole life. So as soon as I took the power back and I took the ability to say, right, I'm negative thinking right now, that's the only time that I got my life back. So it's about the power that we give our thoughts, and it's about the ability to think, I need to think about this thought. And our negative thoughts sometimes do have starting lines.
Yeah,
definitely. And a lot of our negative thoughts can be started because of our experiences and started because of that fear. Like, that anxiety is there to protect us. That fear is there to protect us from experiencing it again. So those negative thoughts are trying to protect you and allow you not to feel like that again, for you to experience something that is negative again. But sometimes those thoughts aren't always the truth, and those thoughts aren't always the reality. So like we've said before in the workshops, our amygdala is constantly surveying the area for things that could go wrong. And they've got a really good memory, so they don't let things go. So we have to kind of almost be that parent to our amygdala and say, it's not going to happen again. You don't need to be on high alert right now. We're going to work through it. We're going to make ourselves new experiences, and we're going to manage. And that's the best way, I think, definitely with negative thinking when it has had a starting line. It does, just because it's happened once doesn't mean it's going to happen every time.
Yeah.
Definitely one of my downfalls, this next one, is identify 5 strengths and positive behaviours about yourself. And I think as a society we find it really difficult to say our strengths and say what we're proud of. It doesn't flow, because it doesn't say, it's not easy to say I'm really proud of myself for this, or this is my massive strength. But it's really, really important. It's so important to say, you know what, I smashed this day. I'm really proud of myself. It's really important to give yourself that recognition, especially in your healing journey. That was really hard for me when someone would be like, you've come really far, are you proud of yourself? And I'd be like, no. But actually it's a lot. It's massive, and it's a really big achievement to be able to get yourself out of that mindset and to become, almost learn a new mindset again. It's like learning a new language almost.
And write down like those, the strengths that you have and the positive things that you find, so that if there's a time when you might need it, you can look back on it, which I do constantly. Just look back on things, and even now someone will say, have you written that down? Because it's something that I need to remember. And then you can share it with other people as well.
Definitely. There's something that's really helped me in the past, is by having this jar of all these positive things that have happened, all these positive experiences, nice things that people, like compliment jar almost. And then when you're really feeling low and you're overwhelmed by these negative thoughts, and these thoughts that no one likes me and everyone's out to get me and I'm not good enough and all of these things, whack the jar out, and you can just give yourself that evidence that you were searching for, that it's not true. Because although it feels like you are searching for evidence that it is true, a lot of the time it isn't. So the last one is identify something that you really enjoy or are interested in. And we understand that when you are in really low mood and you are really struggling with motivation, this can be really difficult. But distraction is so effective. If you can do something, even if it's just watching your favorite TV program or reading a book, just immerse yourself in something new, break that rumination cycle, just cut it off. Give your brain something else to think about. Will decrease that level of distress. And I know it can be really difficult, but when you're really anxious, to do anything but just kind of be anxious. But that's where it comes. That's where the push comes in. That's where you have to almost shake yourself and say, right, I'm making a conscious effort to break out of this cycle. So they're just a few things that you can have a go at in terms of negative thinking. We do have lots of workshops that touch on negative thinking, like the anxiety workshop, the confidence and self-esteem workshop's really good. The inner critic workshop's really good. The fear of getting well is really good. Loads of workshops, and if you are struggling with negative thinking, give us a call and we can always work through and help you and empower you to look at the evidence that the thoughts aren't right. That's what we're here for, 9 to 5, Monday to Friday. We're there. Our number is scrolling along the screen there. And Scott Beecroft just said, how do I sign up for the workshop? So the way that you can sign up is just give us a call. So if you give us a call on 01983 217 791, then we can get you started. But definitely give it a go. It'll be really good for you. So that is all that we have for today. That is just a little snippet of what we have to offer here at Isseropia, and we thank you for coming along and commenting and things like that. It was really good to speak to you all. Thank you very much.
Bye. Bye.